Yeah, like 30 seconds. We're live.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for this exciting event. I'm Alyssa Schmier, a national director at MomsRising. MomsRising is a national organization of over 1 million members, including many members in Colorado. Our main goal is to create economic stability and decrease discrimination for moms, women, and children. And we have a big reason to celebrate today, in large part because of the leadership, advocacy, and perseverance of Senator Bennet. The historical passage of the American Rescue Plan included major temporary improvements to the child tax credit. These improvements are so important to our struggling families and our economy. You will hear more details coming up about exactly how much direct assistance your family now has access to. And trust me, it's a lot of money. And we'll also tell you how to apply for it. But we want to express our sincere appreciation to Senator Bennet for pushing this through and being a leader in cutting child poverty in half. That's huge. And the CTC wasn't the only thing in this vital piece of legislation. It included funds to stabilize our childcare infrastructure, extended unemployment benefits, funding for the increase of COVID vaccines, including to underserved communities, another round of stimulus checks, including to mixed status immigrant families, and an expansion of the earned income tax credit to younger and older workers who were previously the largest population taxed into poverty. Throughout the next hour, the chat box will be open. So if you have any questions for anyone on the panel, please drop it into the chat box and we will try to get to your questions at the end. These questions can have to do with the child tax credit or other programs that support women, moms, and families. Now I'm going to turn the floor over to Senator Bennet. Thank you.
Can you hear me, Alyssa? Great. I've learned after a year of Zoom calls to always ask that question first, not at the end, because then it's too late. But I thank you, Alyssa, and thanks to MomsRising for help organizing this, and to the other panelists that are here today. I'm deeply grateful for it. You know, before I was in the Senate, I was the superintendent of the Denver Public Schools, and I got to know the families very, very well. And what they told me is that they were working really hard. In fact, they say they're killing themselves, but no matter what they did, they couldn't get their kids out of poverty. Over the last 11 years, I've had the great privilege of traveling across our state over and over again, rural parts and urban parts. And of course, you hear different things in different places. But if I were asked to summarize my town halls over the last 10 years, it's really very easy to do it. It is people coming and saying, we are working really hard, and no matter what we do, we can't afford some combination of housing, healthcare, higher education, or early childhood education, or childcare. And we can't save. And we feel like our kids are going to live a more diminished life than the life that we live. And that we maybe even feel like we're living a more diminished life than the life that our parents lived. And that is the anecdotal reflection of an economy that for 50 years, and I'm not exaggerating, it's true, for 50 years has worked really well for the people at the very top, but not for 9 out of 10 Americans. And that's why I've been fighting to expand the child tax credit. Going back long before the pandemic, I introduced the bill with my friend Sherrod Brown from Ohio. We actually introduced 2 bills. One was Bennett Brown, and the other one was Brown Bennett. The first one was the child tax credit. The other one was the really dramatic expansion to the earned income tax credit for childless workers, which Alyssa alluded to. These are, Joe Biden was included both of these in the American Rescue Plan. And I'm incredibly pleased that he did it. Now, most families in Colorado will receive $250 a month per child and $300 a month for kids under the age of 6. The tax credit is now fully refundable, which means that the poorest families will get the benefit of the tax credit. 350,000 Coloradans did not get the full benefit because they were too poor to be qualified for it. But at the same time, 90% of kids in Colorado are going to benefit from this. Nationwide, this expanded child tax credit will cut poverty nearly in half this year. And for Black children by more than 50%, for Latino children by about the same amount, for Native American children by over 60%. In Colorado, half the kids living in poverty will be lifted out of it, and over 1 million kids will benefit in our state. As I said, 90% of children will benefit. For families, what this means is direct help to cover groceries and rent and save for a college fund or summer camp. And for years and years and years, I've gone to the floor of the Senate as a former school superintendent, worried about the profound inequities that exist in our nation. We have one of the highest child poverty rates of any industrialized nation in the world. We have some of the lowest economic mobility rates, and the population in our country that is poorest are children. And I did not believe that should be a permanent state of our society or of our economy. And I said for years that I felt like we were treating America's children like they were someone else's children. Well, I can say with this package that we're treating America's children like they're our children. And this was a historic step forward. It's going to make a massive difference in the lives of kids and families here in Colorado and across the country. And our job now is to make sure that we make the changes to the child tax credit and the earned income tax credit permanent. And we're going to be fighting to do that over the coming weeks and months. And I hope you'll join us in that effort. So let me stop there. I look forward to answering your questions, taking any criticisms people have. Let me turn it back over to Robin. Or let me turn it back over to Alyssa, sorry.
Great. Thank you so much, Senator.
Thank you.
So next, you're going to hear from Robin Boyles, a new mom and MomsRising member from Longmont, who's going to speak to the personal impact and need for an increased tax credit.
Hi, can you hear me?
Perfect.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me here today. And thank you, Senator Bennet, for your leadership. My name's Robin Boyles. I live in Longmont. I'm a new mom and I'm a proud member of MomsRising. I'm here today to share my family story and why financial relief is so crucial for families like mine right now. Before the pandemic, my husband and I worked as cooks in restaurants. We've always worked in the restaurant industry. But when the pandemic hit and restaurants were shut down, we both lost our jobs at the same time and we couldn't find new ones. Everything changed overnight and it was terrifying. Then we found out that I was pregnant. We were so excited to welcome our first child, but we were also panicked about how we would possibly provide for our growing family in such a scary and uncertain time. We ended up moving in with my mom so that we would save a little bit of money to move into an apartment before my baby was born. I don't know what we would have done if we hadn't had that option. It was tough, but about 2 months before I was due, we moved into that new apartment next to my grandfather. Shortly after moving in, we all got COVID-19. It was horrible. I had never been so sick in my life. I actually was sent to the hospital because I couldn't breathe. I can't tell you how frightening that was, not knowing if I would be okay or how it would affect my unborn baby. Eventually, I was released from the hospital, but afterwards I had to inject blood thinners into my pregnant belly because the doctors were scared I would get blood clots. Those blood thinners meant that when I gave birth, I hemorrhaged twice. My grandfather also had a severe case of COVID-19 and he nearly died. He's still struggling from COVID's after effects, and it's hard to see him like that after COVID. Today, I'm doing much better physically, and we both have a beautiful 4-month-old baby girl, but we're still struggling with the pandemic's financial impact. My husband and I are back at work, but we were only able to find part-time jobs in my community. The restaurant industry is starting to come back, but there aren't enough jobs, and at the jobs that are there, there's not enough hours. So we really can't cover the basics and dig ourselves out of the debt we got into when we were unable to work due to COVID. I know many of the parents on this call today probably relate to my story. So many families like mine have debt because of the pandemic, and those bills don't just go away because vaccines are available now. And we have trouble making rent. We often have to pay late. We're struggling to cover expenses for the baby, medical bills, even our electric bill. We can't tell you how stressful it is to worry about how we'll make ends meet and stay afloat when I'm still recovering from birth and adjusting to having a newborn. I wish we could focus on this special time with my daughter, but the money worries are always there. That's why I'm so excited about the expansion of the child tax credit. That $3,600 will mean so much to my family, and it's a huge relief. It will help us stay on top of our bills, cover the basics. It could also help us get more reliable transportation to work. Right before I had my daughter, we had to buy a crappy old car because it was all that we could afford. I'm always worried that it's going to break down. Knowing we'll have a boost to cover repairs and other emergency expenses is a huge help. I'm glad and grateful that the Biden-Harris administration and Congress recognized the need to make the tax code work better for families like mine. I really hope they will make this changes permanent. After all, raising children is expensive over the long term. Families like mine need support in normal times too. Moving forward, an expanded child tax credit could help my family cover clothes and food for a growing daughter, childcare, early learning expenses for her, and more. I hope Congress will continue to focus on tax policies that help working families instead of handing out more tax breaks to huge corporations and billionaires. Families like mine need structural change to make the economy work better for us. That includes tax policy, but also affordable childcare, higher wages, healthcare, paid family and medical leave, and more. I know these issues are priorities for my family and other families like mine. I hope Congress will continue to prioritize the needs of working families and find solutions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Robin, for sharing your story with us. So next, we are going to hear from Sarah Barnes. She's a manager of special policy initiatives for the Colorado Children's Campaign, and she's going to give us more details on the poverty-fighting nature of the child tax credit.
Thanks, Alyssa. Thanks for everybody joining today, and thanks for inviting me to be part of this conversation. My name is Sarah Barnes, and I'm with the Colorado Children's Campaign. We're a nonprofit, nonpartisan advocacy organization, and we advocate for data-driven public policies that improve child well-being across our state. I want to thank Senator Bennet for being such a long-time champion for strengthening the child tax credit, which is one of the most powerful tools we have to fight child poverty. In addition to the health impacts of COVID in our state, the financial burden of the pandemic on families has been devastating. And we've just heard a really powerful story about that fact. We also know that the financial consequences of the pandemic have fallen disproportionately on kids and families of color because of inequitable and racist systems that create more barriers for these communities. We can address these inequities in our systems by making more equitable policy decisions that remove barriers for kids and families. Research and our community's lived experience show that the child tax credit is one of the most effective tools to fight child poverty, which has long-lasting impacts on our youngest kids' ability to thrive. The changes to the child tax credit in the American Rescue Plan will place money directly back into families' pockets. And this helps with those necessities like housing and food and clothing. It also has a huge impact on child poverty. These changes to the child tax credit are expected to cut child poverty in our country almost in half. The child tax credit, together with the earned income tax credit, will now lift more kids out of poverty than any other program we have. And we know that additional money in families' pockets has long-lasting positive impacts on child outcomes, especially when families get those additional dollars in their pockets when their kids are young. A study shows that boosting the income of families with young children by $3,000 a year is associated with better outcomes in adulthood for the kids growing up in those families. And this includes outcomes like increased adult earnings, increased hours worked as adults, and even increased scores on the SAT. In short, policies like the child tax credit that place money directly back into the hands of families help support the well-being of kids both now and down the road. And these policies also show our collective commitment to providing the best chance for every kid to thrive, and they actively demonstrate our value of equity for every Colorado family. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Sarah. And finally, we're going to hear from John Stanley, who's a manager at the IRS Taxpayer Advocate Service in Denver. And I just want to remind everyone that the chat box is open for your questions, and we're already getting some great ones in. So we'll make sure to get to them after John speaks. Take it away, John.
Good morning. Hope you can hear me. My name's is John Stanley, Taxpayer Advocate Service in Denver. Sorry you can't see me. Maybe it's a good thing. So the Taxpayer Advocate Service we're independent within the IRS. So we have an office in at least one office in each state in the country. Some states have more depending on the population size, but we have one here in Denver. We have about 20 employees here in Denver. Essentially what we do is we work with taxpayers, businesses, nonprofit organizations that are having problems with the IRS, resolving issues through normal channels, either through IRS actions or inactions, such as collection issues, refund issues, earned income credit, child tax credit. Anything the IRS does, we have a hand in it. So we know a little bit about everything the IRS does, and we don't necessarily know a lot about it unless we have to. But we're here for you. It's a free service. It's not income based. We essentially have a criteria for you to be accepted into our program, and basically that is if you've tried to work with the IRS and they failed to meet their promises, or if they've given you a 30-day response time and they didn't meet that, it would meet criteria to come into our office. If you're having an economic hardship, irreparable damage, any type of financial hardship where you need your refund right away to avoid an eviction, a foreclosure, medical expenses, school expenses, I mean, the list goes on and on. But we would work to expedite the processing of your returns. If something's gotten lost or refunds are being delayed, anything like that, we would work with the IRS directly to expedite that and hopefully get your refunds to you exponentially, or if you're having collection issues to help stop that, or whatever the situation is. The IRS has several different possible scenarios where we would be involved. But as far as what we're talking about today, the child tax credit, it's really improved. It's improved vastly compared to where it has been previously. The IRS, we're working with them, and we won't have information kind of until they put that guidance out. Sometimes we know a little bit before it goes out to the general public, but the IRS.gov is going to have the most up-to-date information. They are supposed to be working on setting up a portal to, if your family situation's changed, where you've got a new child in the house, you'll be able to update that. If you have children that are born in 2021, you'll be able to update that to notify the IRS that your eligibility for child tax credits changed. And, right now they're working on possibly, well, the guidance is coming on that, and it won't probably be anything be out until we're looking at July 1st right now. But I think they're hoping to do maybe a monthly payment on the advanced child tax credit, or possibly a quarterly, but more to come on that. The portal is also going to allow you to update possibly your direct deposit information if those are going out on a monthly basis. You'll also be able to opt out of that if you want to just take that credit on your 2021 filing as opposed to getting an advanced credit. But as far as our organization, though, we're here to help. If you get into a problem where maybe your child tax credit doesn't goes to a bank account that's closed or something like that, and the IRS is unable to resolve that issue, we can get involved and possibly expedite the process. If it goes to the wrong address, we can get involved, expedite the process. If it's somehow they have information about your children that's, they don't have the right count on the number of children you have or anything like that, we can get involved and help expedite the process, assuming that you meet our criteria, and we're absolutely here to help you.
Great.
But I will turn it back over.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, John. So now we're gonna open it up to Q&A, and we got some great questions in. So if you have a couple others, feel free to put it into the chat, and anyone on the panel will be able to answer it. And we're also welcoming Rachel West from Senator Bennett's office to jump in and answer some of the questions as well. So I'm going to start with Tamara. Tamara asked, what additional help can young people and young families who rely on service industry jobs expect in the future? Are there more plans in the works to help lower wage workers, younger people without long-term work histories, and with and without higher education?
Alyssa, do you want me to take a crack at that?
Yeah, go right ahead.
Great. I think that this is such a great question, and it's really where we need to be focused, because one thing is not is not going to solve all the issues that we confront. I strongly believe that we should be raising the minimum wage in this country. That would be a big help to new people, to young people that are in the workforce today, because because what you start earning at the beginning of your career makes a difference to what you're earning at the end of your career. And I, as a former school superintendent, and we're fighting for that. We got to try to pass that in Washington. I also believe strongly that we ought to have a system of public education in this country where when people graduate from high school, they graduate with the skills to earn a living wage, not just the minimum wage. And I have a proposal for how to set that up nationally. And Joe Biden's actually included that in his next infrastructure bill. It has to do with how to align school districts with community colleges, with higher education, with employers. And I'm hopeful that we could transform the lives of millions of Americans and transform the American economy. Because of course, what we want to get in the end is an economy that works for everybody when it grows, not just the people at the very top. The child tax credit and the earned income tax credit changes are an important bridge to that next economy, which hopefully, as we recover from COVID, we're going to be building towards, rather than going backwards to the economy that was working so unfairly before we ended up in the pandemic.
Thank you so much, Senator. And I'd also add that I think that with this next package, this recovery package, and what we're hoping to see in the next week or so rolled out from President Biden and Vice President Harris, is real investments and policies that have to do with the care economy, and in particular help low wage workers. We think that it's not just enough to get your job back and get back to work. With so many people out of work, we have a real opportunity right now to make those jobs good jobs, sustainable jobs, jobs where you can take care of your family and loved ones, and kind of lead a life of dignity and respect. So besides raising the minimum wage, that would also mean getting paid family and medical leave, sick days, being able to take time off to care for your family, be able to afford childcare so you can work the hours that you need to work, that type of thing. And so that's what Moms Rising is definitely advocating for in the next package. So I'm going to ask the next question. And this is a question that Moms Rising actually has been getting a lot lately. So it'd be great to be able to address this. So Annette asked, what kind of financial assistance would new moms receive when their babies were born in 2021? We've been hearing from a lot of people who didn't have their baby last year, so they didn't file their taxes claiming their new child. And so they were missing out on stimulus checks and some other things. So it'd be great to know what kind of these new parents are able to claim at this point.
Alyssa, why don't you answer, or Rachel? You could happy to.
Yeah, I'm happy to chime in on that. So one feature of this child tax credit monthly advance payment that Michael's worked so hard to put into law is that it is an advance payment, and so starting as early as July, what folks will really be receiving is actually in advance of their 2021 child tax credit. So you'll get half of the child tax credit, $3,000 per child or $3,600 per young child in advance. And so that means that, if you have a child since the last time that you filed your tax return, the IRS will be standing up a portal where you will be able to enter that information and tell the IRS, hey, I have a newborn, just to let you know, and they will be able to advance you the credit for that child. So again, it's a nice feature to include folks whose family situation may have changed. The IRS is saying at this point that families do need to file a 2020 tax return in order to be able to access that credit. So that's the advice we're giving people at this point, and John may be able to chime in on this as well, but is to file a 2020 tax return, but then you will be able to update the IRS on that new baby situation and get the advance credit starting as early as July.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
go ahead, John.
No, this is John, and that's the same information we're receiving as a portal will be set up for children born in 2021, and the same with the 2020 filing. You'll have to have that on file to update it.
And we're encouraging everyone to file their taxes this year, even if you didn't usually file your taxes because you didn't make enough income, or if you've had a massive change in income because you were laid off this year. We're encouraging everyone because there's so many benefits at this point that you're able to get. And Moms Rising had an event last night with Speaker Pelosi where we went over a lot of these things, and we've created this blog. So I'm going to drop it into the chat so folks can access that. You could also get it at www.momsrising.org. And Amy Matsui at the National Women's Law Center walks you through all of this stuff, how to file your taxes, why it's important this year of all years to file your taxes. So there's great information in there as well. And I know that we've been talking a lot about the monthly payments. And so Leslie wanted to know, can parents choose to not receive the monthly payments if they just want to have that lump sum, that they normally get in their tax return? Is there an option to not get it paid out monthly?
So that's such a great question. And we're not entirely sure yet. So what the law says is periodic payments. And in my view, what I'm hoping for is what John mentioned, which is that we can make those monthly payments, because I think that for most people that I've met across the state, having help when they're paying bills at the end of the month, like Robin was talking about earlier, is really for most people, the way that it would work the best. There's been some discussion about whether or not we can leave that choice in the hand of parents to decide whether they want it monthly or quarterly or at the end of the year. And we just don't know whether administratively that's possible. So So that's where we are right now. And we're going, as John said earlier, the guidance is going to come out, we think, in July. So it's sometime between now and then, we'll probably have a little bit more of a heads up than we do today. I was worried a little bit about families feeling like they would have to borrow or go into debt in order to kind of bridge the time to get to the 1 year lump sum, and that might create misfortune for people. And I was wanted to get it in the hands of moms sort of on a monthly basis and dads if we could. So that was my perspective, but we're going to have a discussion in the next few months.
Great. And we're going to stay on this child tax credit for just a few more questions, and then we have some other issues that people are asking about. So Pat said, it's critical that the child tax credit goes directly to mothers and primary caregivers, including those who are undocumented. She wanted to know, how are these issues being addressed right now?
So it's a great question. In the current, Rachel, correct me if I'm wrong, but in the current iteration of this, in order to receive this, you need to have a Social Security number. That's what we passed in the American Rescue Plan. My proposal allows people with a taxpayer ID or an ITIN number to collect the child tax credit. And so there's more for us to do to make sure that we meet the need that you described.
Yes, that's correct. And that's actually, so folks know, a reversal of what existed previously prior to the Trump tax plan. People with I-10 numbers were able to apply for the child tax credit, and his administration reversed that. So we are working hard to get that back on the books, so those families are able to access the child tax credit. And then this is a great question. We love this question because it gears us up to be able to talk about next steps. Raylan wants to know, is the new child tax credit a one-time benefit only for 2021, or is this going to be permanent?
Right now, it's for the year. It's temporary, but I led a letter with Senators Brown and Booker to Joe Biden with 41 senators saying that we wanted to make it permanent. It's hard to get 41 senators to agree to anything. Alyssa mentioned Speaker Pelosi. She would like to make this permanent. I had a conversation with the White House Chief of Staff last weekend, underscoring what we had said in the letter. So we're going to have to push. We're going to have to push to make it permanent. But I think it's really, critically important. It's obviously critically important for families and for kids. And imagine living in a country where we're not accepting the world, where we have one of the highest childhood poverty rates in the world. But for the society, it's critical. Childhood poverty costs this country $1 trillion a year. And we've already seen a report out of Columbia University that says that we're going to the society will get a payback of 8 times the credit in the first year, because instead of spending money mitigating the harms of childhood poverty, we're actually spending money to eliminate half of the childhood poverty that exists in the country. So I actually can't think really of a better investment we could make, and we're going to need your help to make it permanent. I'm sure Alyssa has thoughts about how you guys can help bring the case to Washington.
Yeah, this is a major priority for Moms Rising. We want to build upon the success that we had in the American Rescue Plan that Senator Bennet got put into place, and make sure that we don't go backwards at this point. I mean, it would be a real shame if we cut child poverty in half for only 1 year. This is something that we need permanently in our tax code in order to make it more equitable for women and communities of color. So we have a lot of ways that you guys can engage. And if you're not already signed up with Moms Rising, we strongly encourage you to, but we have a tool that folks can use that I'll drop into the chat, where you can send a letter to the editor to your local paper, and it includes the child tax credit as one of the pieces. You do not need to call Senator Bennett's office to encourage him to support this, but it would be great if you called Senator Hickenlooper and your US representative as well and encourage them to make sure that this is in the next package. And there'll be a lot of other opportunities. We have a tweet chat coming up on May 17th, hashtag tax chat, where we'll be talking about this and other tax issues. And we'll have a lot of ways that you all can engage moving forward. So I'm gonna ask the next question. Let me just get back to where I was. So Afton asked that they're curious about how to access the new ACA, the Affordable Care Act subsidies that are put into the American Rescue Plan and get health care via the exchange. They think that they qualify, but they're not totally sure.
Rachel, do you know the answer to that question? It's not your expertise.
So it's not my area of expertise, but I have contacted our health expert, and he says make sure to contact Connect for Health Colorado to ensure that when you purchase a plan or you update your plan, the new subsidies are taken into account, because these structures have changed, and there will be folks at the particularly sort of middle income families, up the income ladder, who will be eligible for much greater subsidies than they had in the past, thanks to changes in the American Rescue Plan and other COVID packages. So Connect for Health Colorado is apparently the place to know.
Wow. So Stacy asks a really great question, because she wants to know how moving forward we can make sure that our policies are not knee-jerk after the fact reactions, kind of like what we had to do after COVID originally hit. And she wants to know, like, is there plans to make sure that there's a mechanism for financial security and stability moving forward for families, and that it's not just something that we address when we're in the middle of the crisis?
Shall I take that, Alyssa?
Sure.
What a great question. What a great question. Look, all around us, I see the effects of that economy, that when it grows, it doesn't grow for everybody. And for working families and for middle-class families and for poor families for decades, that economy has, when it's grown, actually has been a recession. And what Washington has done in the face of all that, mostly, is cut taxes for the wealthiest people in America and hope that it will trickle down to everybody else. That's not just rhetoric, it's true. The Washington's typical tax policy, if you imagine it, if the mayor of Denver did the same thing Washington's been doing, the mayor would say, well, I'm going to borrow more money than I've ever borrowed before. And you'd say to them, well, okay, but I'm worried about that. What are you going to spend the money on? Are you spending on an infrastructure? No. Healthcare? No. Mental health? No. Schools? No. Parks? No. Open space? No. What are you spending it on? Well, I'm going to give it to the two wealthiest neighborhoods in Denver and hope that it benefits everybody else. At a time when our economy has actually had the worst income inequality that we've had since 1928. So I believe what we need to do is build an economy out of the ashes of COVID that actually works for everybody, that has the benefits in place, as you said, like paid family leave and the minimum wage and the child tax credit, to give people the opportunity, frankly, to stay at work. If you look at other countries that have benefits like the child tax credit, their workforce participation rate is actually higher than the United States. And anybody who is working knows why that is. It's because you can afford to pay for a few hours of daycare, so you can stay at work. You can afford to fix a car so you can get back to work. And we have made it really, really hard for working families in this country to have enough breathing room to be able to stay on the job and earn a salary over time. That's especially true for moms, but it's true for everybody. And then I think we need to work on our education system, our infrastructure, which we haven't invested in for decades. And we've got to decide what it is, what kinds of things we want to make here and grow here in this country in the 21st century. We need to be not just reacting, as you say, but acting to ensure that, for example, we're building cars here in this country and making agricultural equipment in this country, and then we've got a supply chain for renewable energy that because the Chinese government has made so much progress over the last couple of decades that the United States really looks a little bit like we're becoming collateral damage. So I know that's a little off topic from the main topic, but it is exactly the right question, because what we cannot accept is not just another 50 years, but another 5 years of an economy that works only for the people at the very top and not for the vast majority of American families. We need an economy where people feel like they're secure and that they're going to be able to save something and leave something to their kids and to their grandkids.
Yeah, MomsRising completely agrees with you. We think that we have a tremendous opportunity here to, repair what happened in the past. I mean, the holes that we had prior to COVID became craters, basically, and that was with our childcare industry, and the fact that, the vast majority of people that had to drop out of the workforce, were forced out of the workforce, were women and moms because of caretaking responsibilities. So we believe really strongly that if our recovery does not include the care economy, and that the care industry and childcare and paid leave, like I've said, and supports for working families, then we will repeat the mistakes of the past, and there will be another crisis, whether it's economic or health, or in certain regions there could be climate crisis. And so we really strongly believe that now is the time to learn from the past and center women, especially the work of women of color, and make sure that the policies that we're passing lift those families and communities up, and make sure that they're giving the supports that they need in order to return to work. Because if we don't have, say, like a strong childcare infrastructure, women just won't be able to return to work, and the economy will suffer overall, because you'll have a ton of people unable to return to the workforce. I'm not sure, does anyone else want to jump in on that before we move to the next question? Okay, if not, so Raylan wants to know, when the child tax credit comes in the summer, what if there are families that didn't file their 2020 taxes? That she thinks that the tax filing date was extended, and that's a good catch. It was extended. So tax day now is May 17th. It's an important reminder. So she wants to know what options will be given if people didn't file. I'm not sure if John might know that, or Rachel.
I can start, and John should definitely chime in. So if folks haven't filed their 2020 taxes, or they don't file by the May 17th deadline, so first of all, you can always file tardy, and the IRS would encourage you to do that, I think. But if you do not file 2020 taxes, that's okay for purposes of the child tax credit, but it does mean that you won't get that half of the CTC in advance. So you won't be likely to get the monthly payments that will start in July, but you will get the full child tax credit to which you are entitled for 2021 when you file your 2021 taxes. So also important to file in 2021 so that you can claim that full child tax credit. It won't be monthly. And just to take the opportunity, one thing that we have learned from the IRS and we're able to clarify with them is that there will be a lot available on that portal that comes online at irs.gov in July, and it will allow you, options, including, what was mentioned before. They've newly said, that there will be an option to opt out of those monthly payments, so you can take it all, the entire credit, with your taxes at normal tax time, but also you'll be able to update your income, your marital status, and so on. So encourage folks to visit that when it's up and running during the year, but not all is lost. If you don't file in 2020 by the May 17th deadline, you will be able to collect your child tax credit with your normal tax time in your 2021 return.
Yeah, that's well said, and I would strongly advise, if you haven't filed your 2020 yet, that you file it electronically and not in paper form, if at all possible, because the electronic returns will process much quicker, and IRS is lagging behind in processing those paper returns.
Yeah, and just one more thing, I did drop in some resources, including to John's organization in the chat box, but also to free VITA sites that do filing for low and middle income families. So there are a lot of resources out there to help folks file. We know it's difficult, but it's worthwhile this year, including because of the child tax credit, and including to get your economic impact payments, those stimulus payments, if you haven't already received them.
And those are great resources. Thank you, Rachel. We'll make sure to get that out to anyone who RSVP'd for the webinar. And Leslie also asked that, she says, I can see that it's being recorded. So she wants to know, will it be up on a website later? So we're actually streaming this live also to Facebook. So it will live live on Senator Bennett's Facebook page and MomsRising's Facebook page as well. So if you need to go back and look at any parts of this, or if you want to share it with your friends and family, it will be there as well. So you can go back and take a look. So I think we have time for like maybe one or two more questions. So Laura wants to know how the American Rescue Plan affects housing affordability. She said it's not affordable for single parents unless you choose to live in an undesirable area.
I can say a few things about that. It actually relates to something that I know Senator Bennet has talked about in the past and would maybe want to mention here, which is a first thing about housing for anybody who is receiving rental assistance, like Section 8 vouchers and so on. Just to put it out there, know that your advanced CTC payments and the CTC payments that you receive at tax time will not affect your eligibility for that and other benefit programs run by the state and federal government. So just wanted to make sure that people are aware that this is not affecting other assistance programs that they may be participating in. But on housing broadly, and others should chime in, I think there are large structural, root challenges that can't be addressed, in increments that we still face. But I would say that the American Rescue Plan added $25 billion in rental assistance to help folks stay in their homes, to prevent eviction. It also has, assistance to homeowners who are struggling against foreclosure, and that you can access those. It looks like there are a couple of ways. So contacting Colorado's public housing authorities, and in particular, the Department of Local Affairs has an Office of Rental Assistance. I'll put the link to that in the chat box. But then also, renters and residential homeowners in Colorado can call 211, and they can be directed to a local agency that'll help them apply for that emergency housing assistance when they're in a pinch.
That's really helpful, Rachel. And I can tell you that this housing has become an enormous issue in Colorado, all across the state. Urban and rural areas, both places where there was no workforce housing really before the pandemic. Now it's even worse as a result of COVID. So coming out of this, we as a country, we are going to have to find ways of building more affordable housing throughout the country, throughout Colorado, and making sure that we fully fund the voucher program that Rachel was talking about, because about half the people that are eligible for those vouchers don't benefit from them. And this is another case where we should be looking very hard at our tax code to ask ourselves whether or not it's benefiting the people that need it most. And I think historically that's not been true, but I think we're going to see a big change with the Biden administration, including around housing.
Excellent. So I'm gonna ask one more question, what we have time for. So Beth asks, she says she knows that the childcare industry, which is historically underfunded and balanced on the backs of the workforce, typically women and very often women of color. But we've heard that it may get overlooked as being the critical infrastructure that it is in the American Jobs Act. How can and should we be investing in this critical infrastructure for our economic success?
Alyssa, do you want to take a whack at that, and then I'm happy to.
Sure. Yeah. So we 100% agree with you, Beth, that the childcare infrastructure, we need to all kind of expand our minds of what infrastructure actually means and what, gets people back to work and what creates jobs in this country. And it's bridges and roads are very important to invest in, and clean energy and pieces like that, but also the childcare infrastructure. So Moms Rising is asking for two things in the next package. The first is a comprehensive federally funded childcare system that ensures all families have access to high quality, affordable childcare that's available when and where they need it, and invest in the education and compensation of the diverse workforce. And one of the bills that Moms Rising fully endorses and has been a large part of is the Child Care for Working Families Act that Senator Murray introduced 2 years ago. And we're hoping to use that kind of as like the ground to build upon and have that included in the next package. And we also want to make sure that the workplace protections for parents to ensure that they have no job loss because of lack of childcare, and to leverage the recently passed $40 billion in relief funding to eliminate additional fees and cost burdens for families and increase the childcare workforce wages. We saw a historical investment. Thank you, Senator Bennet, for your support of that in the American Rescue Plan. But a lot of that was like stabilizing the industry money, because we were about to 100%, like very much see these child care centers close permanently in record numbers. And so we need to stabilize the system, but we can't just end there. We need to kind of build upon that into next, space, and make sure that it's affordable and that there's access, especially in rural areas, and that the workforce is well paid and taken care of, and that it's high quality for our kids.
It's a great question. It's such a crazy phenomenon of our American society, that we can pay people so little to be in these childcare jobs, and at the same time have childcare be so unaffordable to working families. That's a dynamic we have to figure out how to get through. I remember before I wrote the child tax credit, I was in Rifle, Colorado, meeting with some moms at an early childhood center there. They were very happy that it was there because they had to drive 30 miles to Glenwood before it was open there. But one of the moms said to me, I work so I can have insurance, health insurance, and every single dollar I make goes to pay for this early childhood center so I can work. So many Coloradans are caught in that triangle, and Americans are caught in that triangle. More recently, last summer, I was in Edwards. Alyssa was talking about rural America, Edwards, Colorado, having a conversation about childcare, and literally everybody in the room was crying because of how difficult it was to find affordable childcare for their kids. In fact, impossible, other than leaving their kids with somebody in a crowded home, paying a little bit of money in hoping that they would be okay while they were away at work, trying to support their kids and support their families. This is the richest country in the world, and we can do a better job than that for our families.
Thank you so much, and we agree. And I just want to express that this is the importance of your stories. Moms Rising collects your stories all the time and shares them with elected leaders like Senator Bennet in the White House, and all members of Congress. And sharing your story is really important because, as you can see, it actually impacts the policies that they are drafting. And so we encourage you to continue to speak out with Moms Rising and share your story, and call your members of Congress and tell them your stories. I know it might feel like no one's listening, but we are always listening, and it's always really important for you to express your experience with your elected leaders and their staff. So I just want to thank everyone so much for joining us today. I'm going to turn it back over to Senator Bennet for some closing remarks. But I just wanted to remind folks again that this is live on Facebook. And so you'll be able to find a recording of it there, and we'll make sure to share it and put it on the Moms Rising blog as well. So Senator Bennet.
I just want to, I'm going to be very brief, Alyssa. I want to thank you and Moms Rising. I want to thank Sarah and the Colorado Children's Campaign. John Stanley, thank you for being on. And Rachel, thanks for everything you do. for Colorado. First, let me do this. The telephone number of my Colorado Denver office is 303-455-7600. I might ask Rachel to put that in the chat. It's 303-455-7600. We have offices all over the state, but if you need help with healthcare, as somebody asked today, immigration, small business related things, any of those kinds of things, we are here to help you. And we don't always succeed, but we often do. And I hope you'll reach out to our office and let us know what you're thinking about these kinds of things. And I just believe we are on the cusp of an amazing moment in American history when we can say that we've improved the fortunes of millions and millions of children and their families, but also the country as a whole. And it's just the beginning of what we really need to do. So thank you very much for caring about our country and our democracy and America's place in the world. I appreciate everybody being on the call. And thanks, Alyssa, for hosting it.
Thank you so much. Have a nice day, everyone.